Okay, we'll go ahead and call to order the October 6th meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. Can we call the roll, please?
Yes. Chairman Lane,
Here?
Commissioner Sibley,
Here.
Commissioner Barnard,
Here.
Commissioner Gayu,
Here.
Commissioner Norton,
Here.
Commissioner Goon,
Here.
Commissioner Jacoby, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, first order of business would be approval of two sets of minutes. The first being our August 4th, 2022, and the second being September 1st, 2022. We'll take those one each at a time. So are there any corrections or comments relating to the August meeting? None? If so, I'd entertain a motion. Okay, I've got a motion to approve from Commissioner Jacoby and a second from Commissioner Sibley. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None? Okay, those minutes are approved. September 1st, 2020. Any comments or corrections on those minutes? No? Okay. A motion? All right. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay. I have a motion to approve the September minutes by Commissioner Barnard, seconded by Commissioner Jacoby. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Okay, those minutes are also now approved. Thank you. All right, report from the chair. I don't have anything in particular other than we would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the efforts of our unfortunately no longer Commissioner Mr. Lee Hardee's. And so we have, we'll come up here and have you come up. I've got a little certificate of appreciation for you. Yeah, come on up here. And you can have your plaque.
Get a picture?
Yes.
Lee, do you want a picture?
Yes, that'd be great.
Hold it up, hold it up.
Yeah, we do appreciate your time, and this commission in particular is a little different than many in the city because we do require not quite half, but a decent amount of 40% of the commissioners have to have some professional background in preservation, and so having that expertise on the panel is always really valuable. So again, thanks for coming down. All right, that is all I had. We'll move on to communications from the HPC staff liaison.
Sure. I don't really have too much to report at this point. The primary thing that we have coming up is it's time to prepare our CLG report to send to the State Historic Preservation Office. So we will be getting that taken care of this month and sent in.
Okay. I know last month we had, 5 or 6 folks come down and speak about things going on at the Bone Farm. And I wonder if you could give us a little update on what is just sort of happening out there and if we expect to see something in the nearer future.
Sure. So currently, we don't have an application in place at this point. The project has gone through a pre-application meeting as well as a neighborhood meeting that was quite well attended by the public. So the applicant is currently preparing their application package, making revisions to the site plan. They were originally proposing about 75 townhome units. They are looking to scale that number down a bit, basically in response to some of the community concerns. So as far as where that is in the process, they haven't actually entered the process yet, aside from the pre-application meetings and neighborhood meetings. I do anticipate receiving a formal application package later this month from them, so.
Okay. And are there, forgive me, I'm not 100% up to speed. Are there properties there that are landmarked that would require a certificate of appropriateness for modifications, or is it just the fact that it's kind of a district?
There are no locally designated landmarks. It is not a locally designated district of any sort. There is a farmhouse on the property that did have a cultural survey performed on it several years back, and it would be eligible for local listing, did have some local significance, but the owners at this point aren't interested in pursuing that. There will be a small kind of city-owned pocket park on the property, but it's not on the side of the property where the farmhouse is, and the City Parks Department has not, they don't have interest in owning and maintaining that particular property. They don't think, it's an appropriate, that particular park is an appropriate location for it. And at this point, there really isn't a good opportunity or good option for relocating the house at this point either. So, in a nutshell, it would be sad to lose it, but it has not been designated, and it's not part of any sort of landmark property. It's not part of a locally designated historic district.
So in effect, there's no jurisdiction for this commission with respect to that project?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Nevertheless, as things move, we'd appreciate an update if we
Absolutely.
could. On that, in that same sort of vein, I was curious, I noticed a while back and meant to mark this, 356 Main is undergoing some renovations, and that's not a landmark, but it is a contributing building in the National District. And so again, I recognize, at least the way that our current ordinance is written, there's no obligation for those folks to come before the commission for a certificate of appropriateness. But being the fact that it's actually in a district, I wonder if there was any discussion when that application was received, whether there would be, whether it was presented that to the applicant that, might be of some value to come before the board and get any kind of feedback, or in the absence of that, if we could, again, just be kind of informed as a body. I think it's good for us to be aware of what the development applications are happening in, especially within districts. Main Street, obviously, pretty prime location, pretty visible.
So staff did take a look at that proposal when it came in. I know it went before the DDA board, and the applicant is really looking to undo some of the non-contributing aspects, alterations that were done over the years. So restoring the original brick, doing some work on the storefront itself to make it more in line with its original appearance. So because it's not a landmark, it did not need a certificate of appropriateness per se, but staff did take a look at it, and we felt that that the alterations they were proposing were ultimately a very good thing for that building.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it would be great if we could, again, and we have done this in the past. I think part of this is maybe just staff change and that kind of thing. When there was a project that wasn't necessarily up in front of us for a COA, often we staff might just include that in their report to say, this is happening, it's within the district. It's not an action item for you, but we'd like you to know that this is what's going on. And that we've reviewed it and we've had a discussion about historic preservation with the client, I think it's better for everyone, we get to know what's going on. And if the client, and if somebody wants to come in front of the board and just get some feedback, again, because we've got some pretty smart people on this board, that's something they can do that isn't binding.
Sure, I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, great, thank you.
And are they aware of?
I gotta, this is not an instant process.
Are they aware of the potential for tax credits and that sort of thing as well? If, considering it is and I forget if it's a state district or a national register district.
It's a National Register
So
district,
they would be, they could avail themselves of both state and federal tax credits if they're doing the work appropriately. So
Sure.
that's a pretty
And
significant.
I would have to touch base with Brian on that because he's been more involved as our staff liaison to the Downtown Development Authority. So he's been a bit more involved in that particular process. So I know, they've been working closely with the DDA and such. So I just don't know that they I don't know if they've decided to pursue any sort of grants or if they would pursue landmark designation to avail themselves of grants, so.
Well, but they're already in the district, so they
Right.
don't have to do anything to get state and federal.
True,
tax
that is
credits,
true.
Which are pretty significant right now.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
I'm pretty certain that somebody has mentioned those to them as well, so.
Yeah, because I think if they came back and actually became before us and actually requested a landmark, like said, hey, we're gonna do these improvements, these are historic, we're gonna take, steps that would be consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards in our, rehabilitation of this building, and we wanna landmark it, even under the current ordinance, they would be eligible for a waiver of permit fees, and, there's a decent amount of carrots out there that if they're gonna do everything right anyways, then it can be a case of helping,
Absolutely.
versus, this doesn't always have to be the place where the hammer is thrown, right? It can be also the place where
We have some
things are
carrots.
encouraged.
We have some carrots, so I'll touch base with Brian because he's been more involved in that process than I have, so, and see what discussions they've had regarding the tax credits.
Great, thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay, thanks. All right, next item would be public invited to be heard. So if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda, this is your moment. You can come on up and state your name, and you'll have a few minutes to. Yeah? Nope, all right, everybody's here for the party. Okay, all right, very good. I'll close the public invited to be heard, and we'll move on to the public hearing. So this is a hearing for a certificate of appropriateness for a new accessory dwelling unit at 329 Fifth Avenue. And staff, I imagine we have a presentation?
We do have a presentation. It should be up on your screen. Let me make it full screen. All right, so this is a continuance of the public hearing for 329 Fifth Avenue from the September meeting. As you may recall from the last meeting, they were presenting a certificate of appropriateness package that included porch alterations, or really porch restoration, to remove some non-contributing aspects of the front porch, and also to construct a garage with a second-story accessory dwelling unit. We did continue the accessory dwelling unit portion of the public hearing to this meeting because there were some last-minute changes to the design in response to certain zoning requirements for accessory dwelling units and accessory structures specifically. So in terms of your vicinity here, just to give everyone a refresher, this particular property is at the southeast corner of Fifth and Emery. So this is the HS Webb House. It was built in 1907, designated in 2019. The request is to replace an existing single-story garage that is not contributing with a two-story addition that includes a two-car garage, a workshop, and a second-story ADU. This has shifted from an accessory structure to an addition in order to comply with setback requirements under the zoning code. So rather than a freestanding accessory structure, they are proposing an addition whereby the garage is effectively connected to the main house through a mudroom, through a small mudroom. So planning staff has reviewed the accessory dwelling unit. It meets our ADU standards that are in our land development code. As I mentioned, the original proposal was modified to be an addition versus an accessory structure. As well, Historic Eastside Neighborhood Association has provided a letter of support for this project, both in its current design. So they are happy. They expressed approval of the design, that they were they liked the fact that it was in character with the house and the neighborhood. In terms of staff recommendations, we do recommend approving the addition as proposed. And with that, I am going to turn it over to the applicant to talk through the specifics of the design and proposal.
Good evening. My name's Danielle Lynn, and I'm the architect. I work with, for myself, but in Context Architecture. And one of the homeowners, Julia Stone, is here with me as well. So we'll just give you a quick run through. So up on the screen is the site plan. Emery Street is below, 5th Street is to the left. The image up here is the front of the house as addressed from 5th Street. So that's looking from the left side over here. And this dashed line is the new garage, and this is the mudroom attachment piece that we're talking about. It's utilizing existing driveway, and the previous garage sat in this corner as well. It's kind of a mock-up of the previous single-story garage, and where we are replacing that with the new two-story structure. So this is the view from Emery Street. Again, here's the existing garage. Below is what's proposed. And in the back is the mudroom connection. And we pushed that to the back of the property and tried to minimize that as much as possible. So we felt like we were able to do that successfully without detracting from the historic character of the house. And we have tried to complement the design with colors, materials, similar roof lines, similar window proportions. The windows also have to meet egress, so they had to be a little bit wider to make that work. There's a bedroom up here on the front. And here's another view just with some of the proposed details. The top left is an existing detail over there, just showing wood lap siding. They've got black trim, white siding, and gray doors, and we're matching that color scheme on the house. And we have an accent of kind of some square shingles up in the gable portions of this new structure, the new addition. And the existing house has some shake shingles that have more of the rounded detailing. So we've got some compatible design features, but we're not trying to mimic the existing structure, so they can still differentiate old from new. Any questions?
Your whole presentation?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I just
So you're recorded.
Just for clarity, so you had to increase the square footage of the building, and you're gonna have to obviously remove some historic material from the main house in order to be able to do this? Even
So-
though it's the same footprint that you would have built as a separate building?
So the story behind this, actually, it's not a setback thing, but it's a area of detached structure that's allowed versus if it's an addition. And so the ADU complied with, you have to be under 50% of the area of the main house, and we are at 35%. But with the garage itself also has a 50% requirement, but the two of them together have to be 50% or less. So by connecting it with this tiny mudroom piece, it's now an addition and not a detached structure. So
I
it's kind
would've-
of a funny zoning code.
I would have hoped that you could have gotten an exception to that, considering, again, that this is a historic home and now you're actually gonna have to take a chunk out of it and you essentially end up with the same thing, right? You
It's
just
very
now have a
similar.
little,
And we
little
actually,
corridor.
we don't really need to, there's an existing back door back there. So we're connecting to an existing back door. It already has a little flight of staircase inside of the home back there. So really just kind of tapping into that existing door in the back.
that's just one of those things that I think probably annoy a lot of people.
Yeah, and we did talk with planning staff to see, and they were willing to exempt like a teeny increase, but we would have had to chop this thing down substantially to meet their 50% requirement for entire detached structure. I'm sorry about that. So that was the revision we found out at the last minute, which bumped us to this month. But other than that, the structure is the same.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Yeah.
I'm not sure of the importance of, the cutting back of getting into the historic house. I personally just got a variance. I have a garage that's bigger than my house in Old Town. It's not and my house is not, an official historic house, but it was built in 1906. And I needed a big garage, not a big house. So I know it was pretty easy to get the variance. Is that something you would prefer? I mean, or you're now wanting to do the mudroom?
I would have to defer to homeowners to see if they wanted to try and pursue additional options, though we did talk pretty thoroughly about any alternatives and alternate routes to get that approved with planning for the site review process. And he said that they would be able to, I can't remember if he said that maybe like 10% extra, but it wasn't even close to getting us the garage plus the ADU above, unfortunately.
That's just, thank you.
Other questions or comments? No, I don't personally have a huge heartburn over this tiny little connection, especially if there's already a door there that you're connecting to. I mean, it's a little weird that you had to go through this, but maybe it's okay. I don't think that's too terrible, and I think you've done a nice job of designing something that with the appropriate scale, and I appreciate even the notion of the shingles. That's one of the first things I saw, that they were square, and one of my questions would have been, are these really going to be square, not a fish scale mimic? And so I appreciate you clarifying that. Yeah. All right. Well, if there's no other questions for the applicant, we will at least, although I don't know that we have public comment, we'll go ahead and ask for any public comment if there is any. I'll open. Thanks for the information and the presentation. Well, just with the homeowner, would you like anything to say before I close this section, or are you good? Okay, thanks. All right, so we'll go ahead and open public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I will close the public comment and then open it up for any further discussion by the commission. Any comments or discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion. Yeah, go ahead, so you're on the record here.
Approve this application as is.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion for approval of the certificate of appropriateness from Commissioner Goon, seconded by Commissioner Norton. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right, your application is approved unanimously. Thank you for coming down and spending the time with us tonight. Okay, new business would be next on our agenda, and it does not appear that we have any new business that aren't action items, so then we'll move on to prior business, which involves, looks like a couple of updates. First being an update on the status of our barn, our Dickens barn.
So we have good news on the barn.
Excellent. A lot of good news.
So we have come to an agreement with the applicant. We're in the process of figuring out how best to get that memorialized where the barn will be dedicated, conveyed to the city with a stipend for stabilization, as well as basically all the outlots on the property will be conveyed to the city as well. So there will be that intact resource with the barn, at which point we will be figuring out exactly what we're going to do with it and how we're going to maintain it. But once we have it in our possession, we can come up with some more concrete plans.
Well, now, the other thing I understand is I believe it's still going to be on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting on Monday.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be good if you can make it, Mr. Chair, and it's at 6:30.
Okay.
And I don't know where. Do you know where?
I believe it's at the Sunset Drive Service Center.
Parks and
or
Rec facility?
Yeah, it's at the Parks and Rec facility is my understanding.
Just south of the river.
All right.
I'll get you more details of
Okay.
that, but staff is on board. We have the applicant on board. I think everything looks good.
Okay.
At this point, it's just a matter of getting everything memorialized and such, so, but we
Great.
have, you know, we have a solution, so.
That's very exciting. Excellent. Any commissioner questions or comments on that one? Just a thumbs up. Yeah, well, great. Well, thanks. I want to thank staff for working on this, because I know we kind of threw it at you, and I'd like to call out the commissioners too for, you know, kind of pushing back on this and making this happen. I think it's a big win for everyone, honestly, so.
Yeah, and back at you. Thanks for making it an issue, and yeah, we had to push some buttons and get it to happen, but I think everybody realized it was the right thing, so.
Great. That's excellent. All right, wonderful. And then our second set of updates would be on HPC code amendments.
Yeah, and
Gonna go
what
two
I
for two?
wanted to update the, I missed that.
Sorry.
I'm sure it was snide.
I just said if could we go 2 for 2 tonight?
Well, we've been trying to get back on the council agenda. I am going to meet with our staff team to see if we can maybe separate this into little smaller bites rather than throw everything at the council and yourselves. And I know it really started with concerns about the demolition process and criteria that's in the code. So I think that's my suggestion, is maybe we pull that aside and we work on that and bring it to council in smaller pieces. So at least from a staff team, we're gonna be figuring out how to move it forward in smaller bite-sized pieces, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Just go ahead and.
Thanks. Just for clarification, does that mean that it would be added to the it would be added to the code in bite-sized pieces? Or like, does that change what our overall process is? Or would we wait for the whole package to be done and then it would be voted on?
I'm gonna have to kind of dig into that a little bit. But I think I would prefer to actually do amendments in
Yeah.
piece unless,
Okay.
but one of the big pieces, is pulling out chapter 2 and putting it into 15.
Yep.
And then creating the overlay and everything. So if we can get section 2 so it's in good shape and then make the big move, that might make sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, is it a value to bring that back here as a discussion item for the commissioners to kind of review that language and just go over it internally before, or do we need the city attorney to come here and, what is the right step next,
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna talk to the city attorney about. And that would be my recommendation, is we kind of get a format that HPC's happy with. And then we maybe do another work session with city council on the regular agenda. And just, figure out a plan of how to bring it in pieces forward, so.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners about that? Okay. The other one that's sort of looped into this is status of grants for surveying.
I'll let Jennifer handle this.
Has similar status update from previous meeting. We are still having some significant staff shortages right now, so, because we're wearing a ton of hats and trying to get, development projects reviewed as expeditiously as possible. This has kind of been put on the back burner, but hopefully it will get moved to the front burner sooner rather than later.
Is there an ability or possibility for commission members to potentially help with that process? If it's writing a grant that is, we're talking about non-competitive grants, I think, for surveying property. I don't know that that's a particularly complicated. It's not. And so, I might be suggesting volunteering folks on this commission who don't want to volunteer, but but we're putting pressure on you. I might as well put pressure on everybody else. Is there an opportunity for the if there's a commission member that's willing to step in and help out a little bit, or spend a few hours with staff? Is that possible?
I like the idea.
Okay.
To be honest, we are actually putting together just some backfilling planning help. We're putting an RFQ out, but we'll certainly take volunteers from anybody who doesn't have a conflict, which might be complicated, but we'd certainly love to talk about that.
Okay. Well, I won't put anybody on the spot tonight on the commission here, but if commissioners want to have consider that, if anybody's got an interest in helping the city move this forward, which would help us just move the whole agenda forward. Some of these meetings are pretty short, so yeah, go ahead. Almost. Come on. I'm not thrilled with this, to be honest with you. It says, seat 4, mic on.
Unfortunately missed a couple of the past meetings, so which grants and what type of grants are we talking about?
I think we're going for a non-competitive grant to do
Yes.
additional survey work.
Yes, so we were looking at putting together, doing a survey, doing one of the non-competitive grants to put together a survey plan for the city. And figure out which ones we would be targeting for surveying in the future.
Yeah, this goes back a ways, and I think it was one of the
probably
meetings,
suggested it.
I think you suggested it, now that I recall.
Let me take a look at it, and I will contact you about, like, what information I would need to put that together.
Great, I appreciate that.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Gayu. All right. Any other comments or questions on the code amendments or grants or no? No? Okay, very good. Thank you for those updates. So at this point, we're just down to any comments from HPC commissioners. Anybody have anything they'd like to throw out? Okay. Commissioner Jacoby.
You got it. There you go. All right. Two comments. The first is a reminder that there will be another historic walking tour this Saturday. If anyone's interested in coming, you're certainly welcome. It's 9 to noon, and it starts at the west side of the library. And I've been doing some we'll see what kind of numbers I get, but there will be another walking tour. The second concern I have involves the last reduction of property for designation that we encountered. And we approved it, and I think that was appropriate, but I think our backs were against the wall in a sense, in that if we didn't approve it, they would probably de-designate their property due to economic incentives to subdivide. And I know of another property on Collier Street that was de-designated. And I don't think, just discussing with folks here earlier, I don't think there's any consequence to de-designation. And while we're talking about code amendments, maybe we should think about whether we would want to put something into writing about consequences of de-designation. If people are reaping benefits, economic benefits from designating, and then they decide to de-designate, I would think at a minimum we would want to get that tax and permit money back. So I just throw that out there as a thought. I don't know if anyone else has any comments about that or wants to discuss that further.
All right. Thanks, Commissioner. Any other comments from commissioners? All right. How about our city council representative?
Thank you all for your service.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for joining us here. All right. Well, at that point, we're at the end of our agenda. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have, I'm going to go moved by Commissioner Barnett and seconded by Commissioner Sibley, since they're right next to each other. And all those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for your time.